Ready, Dan?
We're ready, Mayor.
Okay, I'll call this regular open meeting, February 14th, 2022. Call this regular meeting to order. Is there anything else to add to the agenda?
There's no late items, Mayor.
To adopt the agenda as circulated. Moved. Second. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. First item is our consent agenda. This is the opportunity to remove something from the consent agenda to be discussed later on in the agenda. Is there any items that council would like to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing any, I'd like to get a motion to adopt the consent agenda as circulated. So moved. Second. All the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Our first item, business arising in Canada Infrastructure Program, Green Infrastructure Environmental Quality Grant Program funding, the sanitary sewer extension on Sawmill from Walnut to Oak Place. And Corporate Officer, can you just give us a bit of a overview?
Thank you, Your Worship. The application through the Canada Infrastructure Program, Environmental Quality Program funding for the sanitary sewer extension on Sawmill from Walnut to Oak Place. The draft resolution that you resolved on at the last meeting doesn't meet the requirements of the grant application. There's specific wordings that they want to see, which is specifically the middle paragraph that I added to the resolution. Everything else remains the same, is that council supports the project and commits to its share of $374,926 of the project, as well as any cost overruns. I re-listened to the video from the last meeting, and there was that commitment just to make sure that that was your intent. So that's just to re-resolve that, so we have the official resolution.
Want us to move in second?
Yes, please.
Moved in second. Any further questions or discussion? You're gonna let me know right then.
Yes.
Not hearing
Just a
any.
second.
Got their hand up.
No, no hands up.
Okay, not hearing any, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to water matters, general local government election amendment bylaw 1376.02. This is for adoption.
Oh. Did he have the committee report?
Oh, sorry. Grace. Whipping along here.
It's late for Dave.
Yeah. It's getting late in there. Yeah, so let's get our committee report from Chairperson Grice from the committee of the whole meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of items on the agenda tonight. We had two delegations. First was Jim Zafino, the manager of finance from the RDOS, of the 2022 to 2026 5-year financial plan. That was received for information by council. And second was a presentation by EcoPlan EcoPlan International, their trails presentation. Council asked staff for more information regarding grants for the proposed projects, and that will be discussed at a future committee of the whole meeting. And then say my report.
Thank you, Councilor Grace. Now we'll move to water matters. General.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
General local government election amendment bylaw 1376.02 for adoption. And I get are there any questions on this first discussion? And let's see, can I get someone to move the amendment bylaw for adoption? Moved. Second. Again, any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Our second item is the water conservation plan update for 2022. CFO has prepared a report for us, and I'll just pass it over to our CFO for some comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to present to Council for endorsement an update on the Water Conservation Plan, Update 2022. It highlights Town of Oliver's progress in water conservation and asset management initiatives. It provides further direction on strategies and cost-benefit methods to advance conservation, which contribute to long-term sustainability and best practices in maximizing the infrastructure life cycle. At the January 24th, 22nd, 2022, Committee of the Whole Council approved submitting a grant under the ICIP Green Infrastructure Grant Program, and having a water conservation plan is a requirement of the grant application. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Any questions for the CFO? Not seeing any. Can I get a motion to adopt the Water Conservation Plan Update 2022? Councillor Michelle? Moving it?
Yes.
Second, Councillor Grice. Again, any further discussion or questions? Councillor Michelle?
Just want to make a comment, Your Worship. Reading through the plan, it's, the town has done a lot. We start water consumption. It was really, was thinking read through this to get all that information. And I agree with the recommendations that are in it. So that's why I moved it. But it was interesting that we cut water consumption by over half. I didn't even know that we cut that much with all the efforts that we've made. So we've done really well, and we want to continue to achieve the water consumption rate quicker.
Actually, I do have one question on this to our CAO. Just wondering, we had asked for a report earlier on our capacity and what was happening with our aquifers. And according to this report, it seems like we do have a lot of capacity there, but our aquifers are still struggling. They did last year. I'm just wondering if that report is still forthcoming.
I believe I have some preliminary discussion with True Engineering. I saw some report there, and I'm going to follow up with them. My understanding is the preliminary data show that although in general, we do have enough water capacity, and in some extreme weather event like a heat dome or those kind of peak event, we may have a little bit of struggling. Like for example, the past year, in history, I think the two lead water operator told me they never remember that they worked for here, one for 25 years, another for like 20 years. They never remember the two major wells go down below the minimum level, like they never remember anything like that. But in general, we still have the capacity. I can find that report. I think they are doing some fine twisting, and then I can send it to council.
Yeah, no, I remember we talked about whether we need to drill another well or plan to drill another well, so we could have that information.
Yeah.
Okay. We got a motion that moved in second. Any discussion? Call question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Anything to report this evening, Water Councillor Sidhu?
Thank you, Worship. Just tonight's meetings.
Thank you. Anything to report, Water Councillor Michelle?
The same thing.
Thank you. Moving to development permit variance permit. Development permit with variances 5966 Sawmill Road. I'll pass this over to our Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. I have to be given permission to share my screen, please, and thank you, Diane.
You've got it.
All right, thank you. So this item was before council at our previous meeting. I'm just here to touch on some of the revised changes to the plans. So a bit of a background at the January 24th meeting. Council referred it back to staff to determine if additional parking spaces can be added. This proposal included a decrease in off-street parking spaces from 9 to 6 and an increase in coverage from 60 to 63%. The revised proposal has seen a reduction in the size of the rear building to accommodate 2 additional parking spaces, which has reduced the parcel coverage by 1%. So the proposal is a 4,150 square foot cabinet manufacturing shop and retail area, along with a storage building at the back for the contracting business. The property is located within the industrial development permit area, requires approval for the design and landscaping requirements. And the applicant is requesting the following variances, which have been updated, including decreasing the required off-street vehicle parking spaces from 9 to 8 and increasing parcel coverage from 60 to 62%. Photos of the subject property here. And then 2 additional photos that I added, which shows the lane elevation of the subject property. The previous floor plan, you'll see in the southwest corner of the building, there was 1 parking space tucked in here. And what the applicant did is shifted the building. They reduced the size of one of these walls here, but basically what it ended up as was 2 additional parking spaces in the back corner. So 5 in the back, or 5 parking spaces in the front with the 3 spaces at the back. The building elevations. I've discussed this already, but I will just touch on it quickly. It meets the intent of the DP area due to the landscaping. The front elevation has several picture windows. The property is fenced, which provides the buffer, and the garbage area is screened by landscaping. These are the side elevations to the building. Just talking about the parking spaces, there has been a precedent in parking spaces in the area, which I talked about for a warehouse building on Maple Ave. And also I wanted to add that the lane is 9 meters wide, which is 3 meters wider than typical lanes. What this allows for is the applicant to actually park upwards of 2-3 vehicles along the length of this property, adjacent to the lane, and still be on town property and not be on the packing house property. So it does allow for some parallel parking spaces back there. In regards to the parcel coverage increase, the 2% is very minimal and unlikely to impact the neighboring properties. Options for council is they may choose to support the recommendation, may choose not to, or may choose to refer back to staff. And the recommendation is that the development permit be approved. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Director. Any questions or comments? Councillor Grice?
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to thank the applicant for going back and making those changes. For me, going from 9 to 8 instead of 9 to 6 parking spaces is a lot more palatable. And I'm quite to vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Do you want to move the recommendation?
I sure will. I'll move that council approve development permit with variances 2021-36.
Second. Moved and second. Any further discussion or questions? Councillor Radis?
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate everything the developer's done as well. My only concern isn't it's not something that'll prevent this because it meets the requirements. But I would continue to raise my concerns with the length of our loading zones. When I look at this particular map, with a semi-trailer, they will be pulling out, they'll be in the street when they're unloading a semi-trailer at this site. So I really would like our planning department to look at the length of our loading zones in industrial areas, as quite often it is semi-trailers that are being used. I will support the recommendation though.
Thank you, Councillor Radis. Anyone else have any comments? Not seeing any, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Was that? I think this is late. Were you opposed or in favor, Councillor Benjamin?
I'm in favor. I was just slow to put my hand up, but thank you for noticing.
Worries. Moving to bylaw, zoning amendment bylaw 13.2, development permit 491 Salamander Avenue. Director, this is here for third reading.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application was subject to one of our 2 public hearings. The options for council is that council may choose to support the recommendation, may choose not to, or may choose to refer it back to staff. The staff recommendation is that zoning amendment bylaw 1380-20 be read a 3rd time, and that it be forwarded to the Ministry of Transportation for approval prior to adoption, and that council consider development permit 2021-30 following the adoption of zoning amendment bylaw 1380-20. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Questions, comments for the director? Let's see the screen.
Just move it away.
I do have one comment. I noticed in some of the comments, and having walked by there, I believe it is potentially a problem, and that there is no street lighting on Salamander. There's one street light on the corner just past the mailboxes on the left-hand side of the road as you're heading west. I noticed there is a telephone or a power pole directly across from the development that Fortis could put a street light on. And there's one around the corner as well that could possibly have a street light on. I think it would be prudent to maybe, I'm not sure how we go about getting streetlights there, whether that's something that we need to do or similar to Lakeshore where we ask the developer as part of the permit to put streetlights there. I think lighting up that narrow street with the additional traffic that's going to be in that area might be something we're thinking about moving forward. Director?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I had read through the comments and noticed the same concern as well. So I reached out to our director or deputy director of operations, I guess now the utility manager, and he had stated that yes, we could get a light put on that. The approximate cost would be around $1,800. And in our subdivision and development servicing bylaw, we actually have a provision in there where council can delegate authority to the director, being the director of operations, to require an excess and extended services resolution. So the developer is technically not responsible because this isn't the frontage to Salamander, but we could easily require the developer to do this work. And there is limited offsite work required anyway by the developer beyond creating a new driveway off of Park Drive. So if council sees fit, I guess is the phrase, we could easily require the developer to put in that cost and to add the streetlight on that telephone pole. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I'll go to Councillor Rentamila.
Thank you, Worship. Most of the comments that I noticed in the responses we received had to do with parking and congestion on Salamander. So I guess my comments don't so much have to do with the actual internal workings of this proposal, like within the site, but more with Salamander just in general. I wonder if that is a road that we could consider making a one-way, if that would make any sense, if that would ease any of the congestion issues when you have cars parked on the side and then sort of coming and going both ways. It's not a road, in my opinion, that anyone would need to be on if they don't live on the street, because there's multiple other ways to get back there and one of them really close by. So I wonder if that's something that we've ever considered before, if it's something that we could consider, again, to ease congestion, because whether or not this proposal goes through, there already is congestion given all of the sort of multifamily situations along the way. And then my second question would be on Salamander itself, what exactly are you requiring the developer to do as far as finishing along the property line or road upgrades, that sort of thing? Thank you.
Director?
Thank you, Worship. I also read some of the comments on Salamander. It's definitely a no parking area there, where one of the concerned citizens had submitted some photos that shows people parked at that intersection of Salamander and Park. So what we could do is have some no parking signs get put up there and have the bylaw officer pay more attention to that area. In terms of making it a one-way, I mean, that's a bigger decision for sure, and something that, you know, our consultants would, or our engineering consultants, if they have traffic people, that would have to consider a little bit more than before we make that decision. But we could definitely enforce the parking in that area, because it's definitely a no parking area. And then to answer the second question, there are no frontage upgrades on Salamander. It's currently a sidewalk with a barrier curb. So there's no driveway entry except at the north corner, and they'll be utilizing the existing driveway entrance. So there already is sidewalk built along Salamander, and then there's the driveway entrance that'll be utilized again. So there is no frontage upgrades required beyond the new exit onto Park Drive, and then the potential street light across the road. Thank you.
You have a follow-up, Councillor Benjamin?
No, except for to say that I do recognize the potential of making something like that a one-way. It's a different conversation, but I do just wonder if it's something that would help with the congestion in the area longer term. And I know there's, I mean, we say there's no parking along the roads, but obviously if people already are parking along the roads, and then we're gonna go and add more density, there's going to be inevitably more people looking for places to park, which where do they have besides along the roads?
I don't see any other hands up. I guess I'll go back to my original question. What do we need to do to get an addition, at least an additional street light up there, lay up that road a little better? We need to ask the developer to include that in his development, then I would like to do that. I see Councillor Mattis has his hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was, on the basis of that, I would make the motion that staff or that council directs staff to require the developer of 491 Salamander to include a street light as discussed by council in their development plans.
I was listening to the Director of Development Services as well, and I have started the draft of a motion that council delegate the Director of Operations through the Development Service Bylaw determine the benefit of extended services that may be attributed to each of the parcels of land that will be serviced by the services to install an additional streetlight on Salamander through a service area. Is that correct, Randy?
Are you able to bring that up on the screen,
Yeah, I will.
please?
Thank you. Can you see that? It says I'm paused. Okay, can you see that now? Like he's reading it.
Yeah, that looks appropriate. Is there a top, did you scroll up? Is the recommendation for, is council recommending that there, okay. That council, yeah, no, I think that's appropriate. As I mentioned, section 8 of our development servicing bylaw, to make sure I'm looking at the town of Oliver's. It says, council delegates to the director the powers of council under the Local Government Act to require a developer to construct access or extended services. So the delegation abilities are there, but it is definitely helpful to have it included as part of the resolution from council that this is a requirement.
Would that be Councillor Mattis's draft resolution?
My only concern would be the portion where we're determining the benefit of extended services that may be attributed to each of the parcels of land that will be serviced by the services to install an additional street light on Salamander through a service area. I think that's a lot more complicated than what we want. We're not trying to develop a service area for all of the properties that will be benefiting by a single street light. We're just trying to say that this particular property, as part of their development process, will be installing a street light all by themselves. Delegate to the director or direct the, and it's not through a service area, it's as part of development permit 2021-30. I think that solves it. On that basis, I would make the motion as written.
We're asking the developer to install the light.
Yeah,
Correct.
ask the developer.
we can't direct a developer. Okay, we can only direct staff to, yes, to install an additional street lighting as part of the, by putting it as part of the development permit, that will make it part of the developers.
We'll just take that out.
Yeah, that solves the question. Thank you.
Directly start to ask the developer. Yep.
We're not wordsmithing.
Seeing as we've changed it enough times, if, yeah, I will read the whole thing. That zoning amendment bylaw 1380.20 be read a third time. And that zoning amendment bylaw 1380.20 be forwarded to the Ministry of Transportation for approval prior to adoption. And that council consider development permit 2021-30 following the adoption of zoning amendment bylaw 1380.20, and that council directs staff to request the developer to install an additional street lighting on Salamander as part of development permit 2021-30.
That motion's been moved.
Second.
Seconded. Any further discussion? No hands up.
No hands, your worship.
Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Zoning number 2, list zoning amendment bylaw 1380.22, 6955 Meadows Drive. Pass this over to our Director of Development Services. This is for first and second reading.
Thank you, Worship. This application is for 6955 Meadows Drive, and it's in regards to zoning amendment bylaw 1380.22. The applicant's proposing to rezone the front half of the subject property from agricultural transition to RS1 in order to facilitate a lot line adjustment between the subject property and 6940 Mountain View Drive. This will allow the underutilized east half of the subject property to be consolidated with 6940 Mountain View Drive, in which it'll be developed as a vineyard. This is a property location map. So as you can see, it fronts on Meadows Drive and is in close proximity to the Chardonnay neighborhood. The OCP for the site is low density residential, and the zoning is agriculture transition. Photos of the subject property on the left shows the street frontage of the existing dwelling. Photo on the right shows the rear portion of the existing dwelling and the area that'll be subject to the zoning amendment. On the left shows the rear portion of the subject property to become a part of 6940 Mountain View Drive. And on the right is the rear portion, which really shows the proximity of those adjacent homes to this area. They look, all of them have their decks looking onto this area. The subject property is approximately 0.37 hectares in area, with 6940 Mountain View Drive being 0.47 hectares in area. It's noted that this does not meet the minimum of 1 hectare required in the AGX zone. Section 9.1.2C of the zoning bylaw states that the minimum parcel sizes for subdivision requirements do not apply to the alteration of lot lines between 2 or more parcels where the alteration does not reduce the site area of the parcels involved to a size less than that of the smallest parcel that existed prior to the alteration. So to make that simpler, and for clarity, this means that the smaller parcel of the 2 cannot become smaller if they don't meet the minimum. So in this case, the smaller parcel being 6955 Meadows is the smaller parcel and is being reduced from 0.37 hectares to 0.15 hectares. So therefore, the approving officer could not sign off on the subdivision as is. Staff consider that the proposed zoning amendment represents best use of the lands for the following reasons. The proposal is consistent with the OCP designation of low density residential. The proposal will allow for the conversion of an underutilized agriculturally zoned parcel of a property into the expansion of a neighboring vineyard. A maintenance road will be constructed along the south portion of the future vineyard, which acts as a buffer from the single family homes to the south that are along Chardonnay Place. This proposal is consistent with the trend of single family properties residential properties fronting Meadows Drive in this area. Options for councils, they may choose to support the recommendation, may choose not to, or may choose to refer back to staff. The staff recommendation is that the bylaw be given first and second reading, and that the holding of the public hearing be scheduled for February 28th, and that staff give notice of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. Could I get the director to bring the map back up again, please?
Yeah, you bet. One sec. Do you want the ortho?
Well, let's start, let's just scroll down if you would, or go to the first one, I'll tell you. Back.
That one?
Gone. No, one prior, I believe. The original property there.
Yeah, that
Now
one.
that I'm assuming that the yellow portion was part, like that's going to be joined to the back portion.
Yeah, so I tried to clarify that in this map. If you look at the bottom one, this bottom
Right.
map shows where the new line would be, and then the dash line shows the area that's, well, that lot line would be gone. So what you're doing is it's expanding the size of 6940, but it's reducing the size of 6955 Meadows.
Okay, yeah, so we're not creating another residential lot, are we?
No.
That answers my question.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Worship. I was a bit confused when I read it, and I'm not any less confused after the director explained it. So ask for clarification. That portion that you read, that the smaller parcel cannot be made smaller by a lot line adjustment, and that's exactly what's happening here. So how is it that we're allowed to make it happen if it says right there that we can't?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The reason why we're able to do it is because they're rezoning the front half to a residential zone, where the minimum lot sizes, I believe, are 555 in that ballpark, minimum square meters for a lot. And the front portion would be approximately 1,500 square meters. So that's how we're getting around it, is by rezoning the front half back to residential, and then therefore you can create that residential lot.
Okay, so we're removing the front half from the transitional agriculture.
Yep, that's correct. So we have to rezone the front half of the parcel to residential first, enable for the approving officer to sign off on the lot line adjustment.
Okay, thank you. Makes sense now.
Thanks.
Any other questions for the director? Would anyone like to move the staff recommendation?
I will move that zoning amended bylaw 1380.22 be read a first and second time and proceed to a public hearing, and that the holding of the public hearing be scheduled for February 28th, 2022, and that staff give notice of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act.
I'll second. Moved in second. Any further discussion? Seeing any, I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to item 3, zoning amendment bylaw 1380.23, lots 5 and 6, KAP 64043. I'll pass this over to Director of Development Services here for third reading.
Thank you, Worship. This item was the other item that was subject to the first public hearing that we had. The options for council is that council may choose to support the staff recommendation, may choose not to. An alternative third option is council may choose to give the bylaw third reading with a condition that prior to adoption, the properties be added to the multifamily development permit area. And with that, the recommendation is that zoning amendment bylaw 1380.23 be read a third time, and that the bylaw be forwarded to the Ministry of Transportation for approval prior to adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see anybody's hands up, so maybe I'll jump in with some comments. After seeing some of the comments, hearing some of the public hearing I do have some concerns with this, three concerns in general. The first one I have is that the existing subdivision is already zoned RS4, which allows for smaller lot sizes and narrower streets, which is creating some densification to increase the number of developments in the area. It seems to be working well, at least for the time being. But my concern is now that we're being asked to add RD1S zone to the area, that's going to add additional densification, not only through the addition of duplexes, but we're also reducing the parcel width from 18 to 15 meters. And in fact, we're also reducing the parcel size. So we've got in the area that's there now, we've got 350, I'm not sure if it's meters, square meters, I guess, lot size. The RS4 zone should be 555, and we're going to put a duplex on 450 square meters. I'm really concerned that we should at least keep the minimum parcel size width to 18 meters. I think we should get close to the RD1 lot size as well. Although this is going to reduce the number of duplexes, it will help offset the parking and the traffic issues this new development will create. We're basically we've already got a densified area, and now we're adding densification onto densification. It's true that that's going to be a problem. The other concern I have is the renderings of the development look great. However, the reality is we have no control about what is actually going to be built. I do think this needs to be added to the multifamily development area. It's one thing to maybe not have it when you've got a duplex on a single lot in town somewhere, but when you've got 10 duplexes there, and people are looking at the development and going, wow, that looks really great. But the reality is we don't really know what's going to be built there. We have no control over that. And it is referenced in the report, and to make sure that the developer follow through on what's being proposed, I think is really important, especially with this size of a development. And the other concern that I have, I do agree, only one entrance exit is not enough for this area. I think that there should be two. The director isn't able to provide to my satisfaction that this isn't going to be a problem. Maybe it needs to be studied a little more, especially again with this densification on densification on densification. I think those are some real challenges for me, and without some changes in this development, maybe the reduction of a few duplexes to add some larger lots and maybe an additional exit, I'm not going to be able to support the zoning amendment bylaw 1380.23 at this time. Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to give the rest of council a little bit of history here, there is a triplex to the north of this development area. And that standalone triplex ended up there because at one time council had this whole area zoned as multifamily with triplexes and duplexes and townhouses. The developer built that one triplex and took about 3 years to sell the 3 units in it. And at that point came to council and said, hey, this isn't going to work in this area. I'd like to go single family. So I find it interesting that we've come full circle and now we're going back to saying, hey, single family isn't going to work here. We need to have duplexes in order for it to work best for the developer. And I say it's working best for the developer. I won't go over the concerns about parking and access that the mayor has referred to. I believe that those are very real as well. There's no need to go over that again. In terms of our public hearing tonight, I'm not concerned about being reelected, and I certainly resent the implication of that comment. I have complete faith in this council to remain independent and make the choices that are best for the town of Oliver. Originally, I was in support of this, but I am listening to the residents. I know that there were some ideas put forward at the public hearing, but we are charged with judging the proposal before us. I would support a mix of duplexes, but the proposal as it stands looks like townhouses or row houses in the renderings, and I don't think that that fits in the character of this particular community. So I too will not be supporting this.
Councillor Ventimiglia?
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Mattis started off the way that I was thinking of rounding things out. I remember when this area was redeveloped, or the design proposal, neighborhood design proposal was done in, I think it was 2015, the report said. And at that time, the thought of the triplexes or quads or whatever those 3-story buildings were removed. There was meant to be more of those. So basically, we downzoned a bit. Now we're being asked to upzone, and that's sort of just the way things go, the ebb and flow of neighborhoods and of the market and of the demands and that sort of thing. So it's not specific to just this neighborhood, and it is a bit interesting to see how things change over time. But I have a lot of comments, and I hopefully can make some sort of sense of them. First, for clarification, the mayor just mentioned, and this is to the director, the mayor just mentioned going from the RD1 zone to the RD1S zone, the minimum parcel width going from 18 to 15. I had been looking at this report, as it says in the rationale at the beginning, that we're being asked to go from the RS4S zone to the RD1S zone, which means we would be looking to go from 12-meter minimum parcel width increase to 15. Which one is it? So that I know that I'm looking at the right numbers. I've been comparing column 1 to column 3.
So column 1 is what it currently is zoned as. Column 3 is what they're asking for, but I put the typical duplex zone in there in the middle, just to give you an idea on how it differs from the typical RD1 zone.
Got it. Okay, so currently as the neighborhood stands right now, the minimum parcel width is 12 meters. By making this change, we'd be increasing it to 15.
Under the current zoning, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So there was a lot of talk about congestion, which is all, I think, super valid. I've been down, I don't live in that neighborhood, but I've been down in that neighborhood, and there are cars littered all over the sides of the streets all the time, and especially during peak construction time, I guess. It's really kind of difficult to get around. I'm not there on a regular basis, so I don't know what morning work times are or 5 o'clock return to home times are like. But I would be interested, before proceeding, to know if there is, as the mayor asked in the question period, if there is a standard of number of residences before a secondary access is required. I understand not wanting to put too many accesses onto Meadows Drive, but it seems like a pretty easy fix to throw one, don't know of all the streets, to throw one there off of Benchgrass, if that's something that would be advisable as far as standards go for the number of residences that are in there. So I would be interested in knowing that information before proceeding. There were also a lot of comments about duplexes not fitting the neighborhood. And a lot of thought back in 2015 went into the style and character of this neighborhood, and it's in our report on page somewhere in there. Oh, page 3. That there's an existing covenant on the title of the subject properties, which requires all dwellings to have a minimum roof pitch of 512, eave overhangs of at least 16 inches, 6 interior faces to the building, minimum building width of 24 feet, stucco or fiber cement siding, and an offset garage. Would any of those things carry over, or would that be why we would potentially want to look at having duplexes added to the multifamily development permit areas?
Through the chair to Councillor Ventimilla, that would all be carried over. However, if council wanted to add an additional restriction, they could add it into the multifamily DP area, because then you could look more at the form and character of the building, and then also landscaping requirements. So it'd just be an additional measure.
Okay, so but those would carry over at a minimum. So, and for context, and those are so very specific is because when this subdivision was created, they were smaller lot sizes, and the thought at the time by the developer at the time was that they were going to be built in modular fashion. So they were going to be modular homes, and the council at that time was like intelligently so, put in all of these sort of restrictions on the covenants so that we wouldn't end up with just square boxes all over the neighborhood. There was one suggestion in the comments, or at least one suggestion about stratifying the duplexes. And I wonder if is that something that we can require a developer to put in place? Would that be advisable? What would be the pros and cons to that sort of an idea? And I imagine that idea is for long-term consistency in the look of all of the town or all of the duplexes.
Through the chair to Councillor Vientimilla. The strata question is interesting. I don't really know the answer if we can make a developer stratify. We, from the town perspective, this is the last link through Bentgrass and connecting it back to Bunchgrass. So we wouldn't want that to be a strata road. So we wouldn't want it to be stratified in terms of a bare land strata type arrangement, I guess. But my understanding is that each individual duplex lot would be stratified and sold two ways. So it would be basically 10 stratas. They typically, though, in a duplex, they don't operate as a strata council, but it is still a strata. So I'm not sure if that fully answers your question.
You mentioned the roadway, not wanting that to be a stratified roadway. Is there a way, I'm not saying it's something that we would do, but is there a way to stratify just the duplexes and leave the roadways alone?
I'd have to think about that. At that point, they'd almost probably want to do it as a 10 lot, like as a 10 lot strata almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what more to add. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's something I'd be interested in knowing. It was, like say, brought up in the comments. And I think from what I gleaned from the comments, the thought there is down the road, and we're talking, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, what's to ensure consistency in the look of the duplexes. And I understand that the neighborhood's not consistent itself. I mean, there's different styles of landscaping and different color homes and different finishings and all that sort of thing. But when you're starting off with 10 units, really similarly looking side by side, there's probably a bit of a desire to keep them that way in the longer term, not end up with sort of this haphazard looking neighborhood down the road. So that is something that I would be interested in knowing, in addition to the entrances and exits. And I think finally for now, comment and a question. There were a lot of comments or a lot of notes in the written comments about renters and not wanting these duplexes to be bought by investors and become rentals, as if rentals is a really bad thing. And so I'm wondering, is there some sort of a covenant in the current neighborhood as it stands that prohibits rentals?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so any of the homes right now in that whole entire neighborhood could be a rental?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. Just wanted to clarify. I think those are my questions for now, but I'm going to scroll and make sure I haven't missed anything. So thank you for giving me extra time.
Councillor Schwartzberg.
Thank you, Worship. I've gone back and forth on this one a couple of times. I have, the comments about the duplexes taking everyone's property values down. I'm afraid I can't agree with that. There is a multi-home community right next door to where the duplexes would go, that's been there for 25 years, that everybody who bought in there would have seen when they purchased. So, that multifamily zone project has been there forever. So I can't see that would affect that. But the one thing that I can't get away from is the fact that when this was switched from the zoning that it once was into this single family, the council of the day allowed for the road widths to be narrower and the lots to be narrower. So we are getting, and I drove through this subdivision before the meeting today. And when you park on the road, it is quite tight. And I think that, as the mayor said, perhaps if the lots were bigger, we could look at it. We could look at it again. Maybe they'd have to take 2 of the lots out and rejig them somehow. But I really think that putting 20 units into a subdivision that was designed, well, this is 9 extra units into a subdivision that was already allowed to have smaller lots and smaller roadways. That's going to be a tough one for me. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Do you have something, Councillor Grice?
Sure, yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I mean, I was full speed ahead on this when it first came to me, but it's, obviously we have to listen to the concerns that were brought forward to us by the public. I think generally speaking, I mean, our town does require more density. If we want to attract families here, we need rental units because we need homes that families can afford. A report just came out recently. I know it's Penticton, but in January, that couples, dual income couples without kids are now priced out of buying a home in Penticton. I imagine that's probably similar to the reality here in Oliver. So if we do want families to be able to afford homes here, we are going to have to look at rentals as an option. That being said, I've heard the concerns about parking, about traffic, and I think that that maybe the mayor had the right idea where if we can remove a couple of the homes and increase the lot sizes a little bit, then that would ease some of those concerns. Those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure where we go. We all seem to have some questions. Maybe we need to send this back for some rework. The lot sizes, I will say again, are a big concern. You say we've already got densification with smaller lot sizes and smaller laneways. And we're going to have 10 duplexes in there. I think, 7 may be better, because I also think another exit would help. I agree there is parking on Meadows along the outside there, but the reality is nobody parks there. You can drive down Meadows all you want, and nobody uses that parking. Mostly, I think because people don't want to park there, leave their car on Meadows and go through a gate and then walk around the house to get to the front door. But I still think we should be maintaining the parking on the property as opposed to trying to accommodate developments because there's parking on the street. What is our option here, Director? I got Councillor Bentamina, maybe he has a comment before you say anything.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just in regards to the parking, I just noticed and highlighted in our chart in the reports that currently the units, the way that they are right now, 2 parking stalls are required per dwelling. And with this new proposed zoning and also with the regular duplex zoning, it's 4 total. So again, 2 per dwelling. So there was a lot of talk about 2 spaces or in a lot of comments about 2 spaces per dwelling not being sufficient. But that's exactly what is required right now in the neighborhood. So it's not changing anything. What it does change is the quantity, obviously, because we're increasing, would potentially be increasing by 8 residences, therefore 16 new cars in the neighborhood. But as far as numbers per dwelling, it doesn't change a thing. I totally support what my fellow councillors have said. And if this is going to go back for a little bit more information, I would be interested in having a little bit more information about the idea that one of the speakers, Dave, suggested with driveways to the road. If there's enough width there for extra parking on the road, then perhaps there might be enough width for a proper sort of entry exit out of people's driveways. I'm not suggesting that a whole bunch of time be spent, but it would be, seeing as we have to go back for more information, interesting to know if that's feasible or not.
Director?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to sort of respond to that, I mean, you don't want, that's a pretty busy road and there's a lot of pedestrians down that would utilize that new sidewalk. And so now you're going to have a bunch more driveways crossing over public sidewalks. I understand that that's what would occur within the bentgrass development, but it's, you know, you don't want that to occur on a major road. There was another point that I was going to respond to, Councillor Ventimiglia, something you brought up at the start of that conversation that I'm struggling to. I remember. Well, actually, no, I remember now. I'm struggling to understand what an additional access would alleviate, because people accessing these duplexes would turn in on bunch grass and they wouldn't go anywhere else in the development but to the duplexes and then out back onto the street. So how would another entry alleviate concerns? I guess I don't understand, because they're not going through the rest of the development. They're just strictly going in from bunch grass and out from bunch grass. And this is a properly designed intersection with a turning lane. So I guess I don't understand the need for another intersection or another entry exit.
I guess I can comment on that because I do live in that neighborhood, and it is very busy there because all the traffic comes out of there down Bunchgrass. And one of the challenges that happens at that intersection is people are parking on the street. And I took Councillor Schwarzenberger there the other day and I said, look at the challenge here. You're sitting at a stop sign and you have to creep out 6 or 7 feet because you can't see past the car that's parked by the mailboxes. So now you're going to increase a whole bunch of traffic coming that way up Bunchgrass or coming the other way. Whereas if you had another exit to the on the north or sort of on the south side of Meadows Drive near the development, that's multifamily development that's right there, it would give you at least a couple of exits and take some of the pressure off of that area. With the narrow streets there and the densification, you've just got a lot more people living in an area, which is great, but it does come with some challenges. And I think having an additional exit there would help alleviate some of those challenges at the end of the day, when you know that you see when you live in there and you see the traffic flows that happen in there. For sure, it does get challenging. I suspect, like, I know there was conversation about it's challenging for when the garbage truck comes in there because of the narrow driveways. If anybody parks on a street there, it becomes a one-way street. It's very much like Salamander. It's challenging that way. I would imagine there could even be times there where it'd be difficult to get a fire truck down there. And having another entrance may help with the emergency the access for first responders into that area as well. I think the more you try to cram houses in there and get one little pinch point to get out of there, just creates more problems than are being solved. Does that help, Director?
Yeah, a little bit. Thank you, Worship. I did want to touch on the width of the road. It does actually meet our standards. It's at the absolute minimum. There are several other places in town that have this width of road. Just an example being Oxbow Crescent, just to the north. We've never heard any concerns, never heard a complaint about road width, parking. The narrower the street and the more vehicles, the safer the street is, because people drive slower. The more cars that are parked on the street, the safer the street is. So I just wanted to add that these comments have only come up because of this proposal. We haven't heard from any of those people that live there now currently about any complaints about parking or driveway or emergency access. And those complaints have never come up in other developments in town. So I just want to make sure that that's stated. Thank you.
And I'll just follow up on that the development to the north, Oxbow, has 2 entrances, 2 exits. And also, I think the road capacity in that area is already at capacity until you finish off the development. And that's when it becomes a problem. Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you, Worship. A question and then just an observation. Is roadside or like on the road parking actually technically allowed on the street there?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Ventimilla. Technically, if you look at our road standard for this type of road width, it is not designed to have on-street parking. So that's probably where part of the concern comes. But as I mentioned, there are many streets that have this, and they get by just fine, just like the current residents are getting by just fine in this area. Thank you.
Yeah, and the observation that I would make then is, I didn't realize that right next door in Willows, they have the same street width, because driving through the two developments is like night and day. There are rarely any cars on the side of the street in Willows. There are not the big recreational vehicles taking up space in driveways. It feels spacious. And then you drive into this development and it feels very tight. So it's interesting to know that they're the same size road width.
Councillor Mass.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could I ask that the recommendations be brought back up on the screen share?
This was the original one there.
Could we have the screen that shows the choices, please?
This is the current resolution as presented by the Director of Development Services. This is an alternative one, and this is the one that I've added. That it be referred back to staff. So this was the choice here.
Okay, so there's the first one that you added, then there's this one, and then you said there was a third one?
And that's to add it into the development permit area, multiple family development permit area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Houle has his hand up, and so does Councillor Ventimilla.
Okay. I'll go to the director first.
Thank you, Mayor. I did want to add for council's information. I did see an original design when this first came in that had eight duplex lots that within the RD1 zone. So just for council's information, if they were to require the applicant to meet the RD1 zone, that I believe that 8 lots could be created along the outside. So 8 plus the 6 single family in the inside. Thank you.
Councillor Ventimilla.
You're on mute.
Councillor Ventimilla.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Director. That is good information and may end up working well, but I'll make the recommendation that we refer back to staff for more information. And the director needs for us all to throw it again, what the more information is that we want, or if that's all been noted, but I will make the motion.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Director, from the discussion we've had, do you think you have enough information to go back and have a conversation and review the development with the developer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do believe I have quite a bit of information. It would be helpful though, if I'm going back to the developer to push back on the number of lots. I mean, that's the biggest thing. That's the most important thing, obviously. So it would be helpful to know, and I don't know if council, I don't know what the appropriate method is, but just knowing how council as a whole, I understand that a couple of council members have commented on the lot width and the lot size, but maybe it'd be helpful to know that whole picture from all of council. Then that way that can be the starting point to the changes that are required. Thank you.
Councillor Ventimilla has her hand up, and Councillor Manis.
Okay. Oh, and Councillor Grice as well. I'll go to Councillor Grice first.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been kind of quiet. I guess to answer the director's question, I don't know what that number would be, but it seems that, based on the overall concerns of the neighboring community, that seems to be what would sort of rectify a lot of those concerns. That's probably not that helpful, but that's my personal answer to that question. I did have one question, and I'm sorry if this is in the report and I missed it, but I'm wondering what the rationale would be to add the properties to the multifamily development permit area.
Sorry, just through to Councillor Grice, you were wondering what the rationale is for adding it to the property?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, with that, then it would be, each lot would be treated as a multifamily development permit where what would happen is the applicant would submit the drawings first to planning. And I could bring a report to council, which actually delegates the signing of development permits for duplexes to staff. And what that means is that they would pay half the price, and then they would be way less time because it wouldn't go to a council meeting. But basically, the planner, being myself, would review the plans and see how it matches as to what was proposed at the council meeting. Look at the landscaping as well, require some, albeit whatever, extra trees in the front, require a landscaping deposit. And then basically they would be held to a certain kind of standard for the developments.
Thank you.
Councillor Madison?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think Councillor Ventimiglia had her hand up first. We'll let her. Okay, I will carry on then. To go back to the director's original question, for myself, I can't give you a firm number. I would prefer to see this street a mixture of single family and duplexes scattered throughout, rather than creating the townhouse look that was proposed in the renderings. Because with all of them looking virtually identical all the way down the street, that to me almost looks like a low-rise apartment building, so to speak. Whereas if we had a mixture of single-family homes and duplexes throughout the street, possibly both sides, I think that would be more fitting and could easily be designed to fit better into the neighborhood. I hope that helps from my perspective.
Councillor Ventimiglia?
Thank you, Worship. So for me personally, I hadn't twigged on the width thing, but hearing the conversation from my fellow councillors about density, it definitely makes sense. Just going back to our original numbers, so currently as it stands, we're going from 18 single family home lots, what we have right now, to 10 duplexes and 6 lots, meaning 26 living units total, which is an increase of 8 living units to the neighborhood, which is where I guess the concern obviously comes in with the traffic and the extra cars and that sort of thing. So perhaps somewhere in between the 0 and 8 number would be desirable. But I don't have a firm answer on that one. What my sort of main things that I would like to know going back to the developer or just researching in general is about the strata concept that we were talking about before. So if these are all to be in one row on the street side, is it possible to create a 10-unit strata development, not including the roadway, just for those units? And I really do understand the apprehension of people in the neighborhood thinking what these, units that start off looking very much the same are going to look like 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So I support adding the duplexes to the multifamily development permit areas for basically phase 1 to make sure we start off on the right foot. But I would be really interested in knowing if we can require that those lots be stratified. And then also, just as we spoke about before, I would really like to know if there's a standard number of residences in a neighborhood before a secondary access is required. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any comments, Councillor Schwarzenberg?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just thinking in my head that if we ask the developer to take out 2 or 3 duplexes, we're going to be down to where he might as well just build 18 single family homes and be done with it. And he doesn't have to come back here ever again. So unless the developer is really stuck on doing duplexes for whatever reason, I'm not sure that removing 2 or 3 does all that much. But I'll certainly look at everything that comes back. I assume, Director, that if he comes back with something different, we would be required to do another public hearing. Is that not the case?
Through the chair to Councillor Schwarzenberger. I don't know the answer to that, if it just changes between a couple duplexes. I believe best practice would be to do another public hearing, but perhaps the corporate officer has a bit more knowledge in when a public hearing would be required or not. Actually, I would just say probably, sorry, Diana, if the bylaw is changing, which it would be in this case, because you'd be changing the required lot widths, you'd be rezoning to RD1. So, I mean, that's a different bylaw. So I'd assume another public hearing is required, but maybe I just answered your question. My question to you, corporate officer.
I believe you answered my response. Yes, I would say that a
Okay.
public hearing would be required.
All right. I was going to say too, council may, if council wants some of these questions answered now, I mean, I know there's a big list, but I do believe the developer and the agent are on the line. If there are some questions that council feels that need to be asked right now, just to let you know.
Yeah, I think it would be prudent to go away and have a discussion and a bit of a thinking about these. These are some pretty major changes. We're talking about maintaining the RD1 lot size for duplexes to reduce adding densification on densification here. We're talking about potentially another exit, which would make it more palatable. Maybe rejigging the whole development where you don't have all the duplexes, as Councillor Mattis mentioned. I think there's quite a few things here. The multi-family development area. I think there's lots of things here, and I think also there needs to be some thinking and attention about the responses from the residents in the area. We've had over 20 responses against this development. I think the developer needs to spend a little bit of time. You guys need to work together and come back with something that maybe addresses some of those concerns. So this could be a win-win for everybody.
The Director of Development Services has his hand raised.
Director?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, perhaps the best option might be, well, I will have the conversations, but if they remove 2 duplexes, that reduces the units by 4. So now you have 4 extra units in the neighborhood that weren't planned on being there originally. Does that require an additional access when the previous one has been engineered and designed? Do you require an extra access for 4 extra units? And what it does by going back to those widths is if you increase the widths, you can possibly get more than one parking space on the lot for each duplex. So right now, because the driveway widths, the lot widths are proposed at 15 meters, you could potentially fit 6 cars on the lot, but that's if you want the entire driveway, the driveway to span the entire width of the property, which is not, it's not aesthetically pleasing at all. But if you expand the required widths of the lot to upwards of 18 meters, then perhaps you can accommodate additional parking on those lots. Thank you.
Yeah, those are all good suggestions, and that's one of the things that you would get by increasing the lot width to 18. You may have that opportunity. It is challenging to have a car in the garage and a car parked right behind it outside. It's going to lend itself to more on-street parking. It's not a perfect solution in any way. I just think a rejig of it, taken again into context of the comments that have been received in our discussion, is worth doing that. And I don't think 2 duplexes is triggering the extra exit. I think the entire development and the other 9 lots that have been built just previous to this has increased the size of the amount of people living in that area. So I don't think 2 duplexes is triggering it. I think it just needs to be looked at. that everything is gonna be forced out of that one intersection and that one roadway at the end of the day. Like I said, for first responders, all kinds of just access and through there. The Willow Glen development just to the north works really well. That's the same development. Can you imagine that not having an exit at the south end of that and everybody being forced out to the one entrance? Why was an extra exit put in there? There has to be a good reason for that, because they could have put an extra house there. So I think those things need to be looked at before it comes back to council. But those are my feelings anyway. Do we have a motion that's been seconded?
Yes, we do. The zoning amendment bylaw 1380.23 be referred back to staff for additional information.
Okay. Are there any other comments from council? See anything?
Nobody has their hands raised. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, not seeing any here. I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, moving to business, temporary use permit renewal 6036 6042 Station Street. I'll pass this over to Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. I'm running out of gas. I have an electric vehicle though, so that's good news. Yeah, no, we were supposed to get chargers out in front of Town Hall. I don't know what happened to that, but anyways. So this application is in regards to 6036 and 6042 Station Street, and it's to do with temporary use permit renewal 2021-34. In 2019, it was brought to staff's attention that the subject properties were being used for the outdoor storage of lumber, which is not a permitted use. On December 9th, 2019, a temporary use permit was issued to allow this use to occur for 2 years. It's since expired and the applicant's seeking a 1-year extension until such a time that a longer term solution can be had. The OCP for the subject properties is commercial highway, with the zoning being C3. Here are photos of the subject property showing the outdoor storage of lumber. The license of occupation area. So the existing license will be extended also for the period of the temporary use permit if approved, and this will enable the applicants to occupy the town-owned lane behind the subject properties. I know it's not built as a lane, but it is town property. The annual lease rate is approximately $1,500, well, not approximately, it's very precise, $1,585.56. As per section 22.2 of the OCP, the town of Oliver may consider the following criteria. The use must be clearly temporary or seasonal in nature, so no permanent structures are being built to accommodate this use. The compatibility of the proposal with adjacent uses. Currently, the property is surrounded by industrial uses and vacant lots. The impact to adjacent uses over the short term is seen as minimal. The opportunity to conduct the proposed use elsewhere in the community. The amount of industrial land available is starting to be slowly reduced with the recent developments of lots along Maple Avenue. This is why the best course of action may be long-term for the town to lease the underutilized area below Cock and Bull to structure land. I'll talk about that a little bit right now. So possible lease area. The applicants and town staff have had preliminary discussions about leasing this portion of land below Cock and Bull. This used to be the existing highway way back in the day. So there is some road. You can see there's road base to this where the road used to go up. The applicants could potentially add fill and level out this area. We do have infrastructure that runs underneath this area up to that Cock and Bull building. So water and sewer lines. So they couldn't really level it and get rid of all the material, but they could raise up the grade and level it if that makes sense. But this might be a possible solution long-term. It's tucked away. The town can't really do anything with the land. People are utilizing it anyway for parking. So this may be a solution where it frees up the land that is currently being used by the applicants on Station Street. It frees up that land for a commercial build to occur on that site. Options for council is they may choose to support the recommendation, may choose not to, or may choose to refer it back to staff. The staff recommendation is that council approve the temporary use permit and be directed to issue the permit, and that staff renew the existing license of occupation agreement for the duration of the temporary use permit. Thank you.
Director, Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move the recommendation of staff as given to us. Just for staff or for council and staff's information, the lot next to this that is currently empty is going to be developed in the near future. So the cock and bull solution is right on track. But I will make the motion.
Moved in second. Any further discussion or questions? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Item 2, 2021 Sandy Dump Statistics Update. CFO has a report for us.
I don't think she heard you, Mayor.
I just said to the CFO that you've got a report for us. Do you have any comments on the Sandy Dump or just for information?
No, just the purpose of this report is to provide a quarterly report from the last quarter of 2022. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the report? Do we need a motion to receive for information?
The motion is that council receive the 2021 Sandy Dump Statistics Update report for information.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? Seeing any, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to item 3 under business, the 2022 SOGA resolution. I'll pass this over to our corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to present council with the draft resolution for the spring 2022 SOGA annual convention or meeting and convention. At council's last meeting, January 24th, there was discussion on potential resolutions that could be brought forward for your consideration at this meeting. One was tiny homes and the second was disaster response. Councillor Grice advises that the SOGA board will be drafting a resolution regarding the disaster response topic. So that just leaves council to consider the tiny home resolution, which was skillfully drafted by Councillor Grice. And I just added one small paragraph at the end. So the resolution is before you. If you have any amendments or comments, we'd be happy to hear them.
I will move that council endorse the draft resolution as presented and submit to SOGA to meet the February 25th, 2022 deadline. Oh, that was not the recommendation.
The resolution is that council endorses the following resolution and submit to SOGA for consideration at the 2022 annual general meeting and convention. And then there's the whole tiny home resolution that I can read, or maybe what I can do is share it on my screen. Let's just see. If that would work. Yes, get that over. Oh. Having trouble with my share screen for myself. There we go. So here's the tiny home resolution. Would you like me to read the whole resolution?
If it needs to be read, I can read it.
Okay, there you go.
Whereas owning a home in British Columbia is becoming increasingly unaffordable, during the 2020-2021 fiscal year, BC Housing subsidized nearly 19,000 shelter spaces, housing units, and rent supplements. It was reported by the Bank of Canada that in Q3 of 2021, Canadians needed to spend over 37% of household income to service a mortgage. And whereas tiny homes offer an affordable, quick to build, and green alternative to standard housing, therefore be it resolved that the province of BC review the BC building code to address barriers such as but not limited to egress, headroom, and window and door size, and to recognize, allow, and provide building requirements for tiny homes. And be it further resolved that the province incorporate these changes into Part 9 of the BC building code that would define tiny houses as allowable permanent dwellings, and thus permit them to be constructed where local government official community plans and zoning bylaws deem them appropriate.
I'll second. Second, any comments or questions? Not seeing any, I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to correspondence.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we have a few pieces of correspondence before council for consideration. First being from the mayor of the District of Stewart regarding their petition to the clerk of petitions of the House of Commons. It's a wildfires petition. The proposed motion is that council may wish to support District of Littlewitz BC wildfire petition and direct staff to draft a letter to MP Richard Cannings to present to the petition of the clerk.
Any thoughts on this one?
I think it's specifically about better forest management and wildfire protection, following standards in other provinces.
That's great.
I will move that council support the District of Littlewitz BC Fire Petition Act and direct staff to draft a letter to MP Richard Cannings to present the petition to the clerk.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
The second piece of correspondence is from Mayor Leslie Baird of the Village of Cumberland. They're writing regarding Bill C-216 to secure federal aid on decriminalization, safe supply and access to recovery, treatment and harm reduction services. The proposed motion is that council may wish to support Village of Cumberland's for Bill C-216 and direct staff to write a letter to Prime Minister Trudeau and the Minister of Health and Addictions, Carolyn Bennett.
I would move the motion.
Moved.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
The third piece is from Mayor Lisa Helps of the City of Victoria regarding the legal challenge against discrimination of freedom of religion in Quebec's Bill 21, an act respecting laicity of the state. The motion before council is to support the City of Victoria's letter for the current legal challenge against the discrimination of freedom of religion in Quebec's Bill 21.
I'll move the motion.
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
And the next piece is from MIADC regarding 5 regional area association representatives that are available for election. Expression of interest are due March 15th to sit on the MIADC board. Prior, they were representatives from the area associations, and a change in their act is now that they're elected positions.
I'll move receipt and file, as I believe none of us are insurance brokers.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
The next piece of correspondence is from MP Peter Julian, New Westminster Burnaby, regarding Bill C-2229. And he's seeking council to support and issue a public endorsement in the 44th Parliament to urge the federal government that all MPs support Bill C-229, which is an act to amend the criminal code, which is banning symbols of hate.
I would move that council receive and file.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
And the last piece was just added today as a late item. Email received from Ms. Diane Faulkner regarding keeping children safe from protests at school. She wrote to council with regards to the recent incident up at South Okanagan Secondary School. The motion is that council may wish to direct staff to draft a reply to Ms. Faulkner in support of keeping protesters away from school.
I would move that council direct staff to draft a reply to Ms. Faulkner. I'll leave the last part off.
I'll second that. I may comment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally understand that the sentiment, and I think that the safety of our students is of the utmost importance. However, I don't want to remove their right to protest. So if the students say want to walk out or protest something at the school, I want to take that right away from them. So I would want to draft a response. I'd love to learn her writing to us. I think that's really great. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And I think we did that one. And the last is that the weekly mail be received for February 14th, 2022.
So
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to reports, Councillor Grice.
thank you, Worship. Just one meeting to report. February 9th was a special SILVA meeting to discuss emergency management.
Thank you, Councillor Grice. Councillor Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Worship. Tuesday, February 8th, I attended the Oliver Tourism Board meeting. Wednesday, February 9th, I attended the agenda review with the mayor and senior staff. And just as a side, I'd like to thank Councillor Mattis for staying up well past his normal bedtime.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberg. Councillor Mattis. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. I am too low on gas at this time. It was a tough day at the beach. On Wednesday the 2nd, I attended the South Okanagan Aquatic Center committee meeting.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Benjamin.
Well, you missed the snow today, Councillor Mattis. On Tuesday, February the 1st, I had a tour and a visit with the new GM Transwest Helicopters. And it's such an impressive operation. I've had the opportunity to tour there once before. We're quite fortunate to have something like that in our community. On Wednesday, February the 2nd, attended the South Okanagan Aquatic Center meeting where the regional district was officially invited to formally join the committee. And later that afternoon, met with a new building and business owner in town to discuss their plans. And this is another new business that is here specifically because of involvement with Area 27. So I'm also very fortunate to have such a facility like that one so near to us and all of the spin-offs it's provided for our community. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Councillor Benjamin. Myself, on January 25th, I had a meeting with Sergeant Wigglesworth, regular monthly meeting that I have with him. January 26th, I had an opportunity to meet with Chief Louis. I got him to sign my book, Red's Rules, and have a good conversation about some of the content in that book. February 2nd, Aquatic Center Advisory Committee. February 3rd, RDOS. February 9th, Alder Heritage Committee. February 12th and 13th, I did a few hours of Farm Watch each day. And I'd just like to congratulate Sean Kennedy for being named the new Public Works Manager. Filling this position is good news for the operations department that continues to meet the challenges of providing the vital services needed by our growing community. Next upcoming meeting is February 28th, 2022. Acting mayor scheduled for the rest of February is Councillor Schwarzenberger, and March, April, and May, Councillor Mattis. Is there anybody online with this ban for public question period?
There's two attendees. If they wish to speak, they should raise their hands. I don't see any hands raising.
Okay. Since somebody has raised their hand, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Second. Question, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you, council.